Well, hi and welcome to Glitch 2600 and our Geek Out. First, you're going to wonder, who am I? Well, I'm Brian, aka Glitch, your friendly host through all things geekery, and you're here for a Geek Out. And Geek Out is just where you can ask your questions and get them answered live on the air. So if you have one, now's the time to pop in, ask those questions. It can be anything about computers, mobile devices, photography, videography, any of those fun technology toys. I'm here to try to answer those questions for you. So just ask away and I'll be here. Otherwise, we're going to geek out and talk on other fun things while I wait, because people are always submitting questions. So I'm always getting something here or there. I'm checking the other screen just to make sure all the feeds are going correctly, because like I said, since we do this live, I got to make sure that I'm getting everything in there. So let me open that. And so far, it looks like everything's clear. So yay, hooray, hurrah! So if you're new here, say hi, because we'd love to know that you're new here, and welcome, if this is your first one. But we had a few different things we've covered over the month. So, I get lots of questions, and, I work with some pods and different technologies. We've been working on little things like on what they call a PTZ camera, pan, tilt, and zoom, commands to be able to move it, using your browser. Not going to a browser web page, but using commands that you send through, so little text codes to move it. So I was helping one of my pod people with that. So that was fun, messing with their API or program interface, their application program interface. That's what API stands for, because us IT guys, us geeks, really, really love our acronyms. But I was helping them with that. We've been doing things for setting up Stream Deck, which is a nice little multi-key button system. It's what I use to drive, so I can pop up stuff like this up on the screen there, where you get the subscribe and like and the little pop-ups. So that's some of the stuff we've been working on and helping people with outside. Here soon, we'll probably be working on a video where we talk about doing multi-actions with that. Just a sneak peek on what's going to be coming in some of our future Glitch Bites. I've been working on some stuff using Automator and shortcuts. So Automator is inside your Mac OS. There's like things on the Windows side, much like Task Scheduler and things there. But with Automator, we can make little things that you can do inside with your folders. On your phone and watch, you can do something called shortcuts. So with that, I have a fun thing I can pop up on mine where I can make QR codes quick and easily on the phone. So we'll be covering all that in a future Glitch Bite. And who knows, maybe we'll give a sneak peek today, depending on. So let me get this set up really quick and share out this window. So we're not going to do a screen, we're going to do an app. And let's just make it Chrome. So I'm going to pop on over here to this handy dandy interface and show you guys some fun stuff. So just to show you some of the stuff we have covered this month, that you might find useful. Yesterday, we did a Glitch Bite talking about creating smaller videos with HEVC or H.265 compression with transparency. So we had a nice little video we did there. You can see it was streamed 20 hours ago. But I showed you how to batch do those. So we were able to take a 435 megabyte file or video and turn it down to, if I remember right, 30, 20 to 30 megs. So that's a nice way to save a lot of space. And when you're using something like Ecamm that I'm using here, as I represent my Ecamm fam, as we do that, it can save a lot of space as we load in these assets, these graphics that you see down below, all that. Whenever I have those motion ones, that's stuff that I can switch to that higher new encoding, and you lose very little quality. So that's a video on that we did just yesterday. The other thing we talked about not that long ago was microphone tips. People always ask me how to get the best sound, what type of microphone to get. I'm actually using a different microphone than I care to right now. I have a better one to replace it with. Don't get me wrong, I like my blue Yeti that's operating over. We'll partially bring it in scene here. You can see this blue Yeti sitting there, upside down with my little mount underneath it. But people always ask how to get better sound. And right now, I'm using just the Blue Yeti before Logitech bought them. But I'll be using a different condenser, or there's dynamic mics. And we kind of talk a little bit on that, but tips like using a shock mount is something that came up. Because when we're banging on the table, you can hear this right now, but if I was to bang on this, if I bang on the microphone, you're going to hear it's going to peak out. Where if I tap on other parts, you don't hear it nearly as much. So a shock mount is pretty important. For there are pops, explosives, and different T's, sounds, your P's, T's, and S's. Having that little fuzzy ball or different things on the front or a pop filter helps with that. And then we talked all different styles about placement and where to address your microphone. If it has a band over the top, that means don't address it top. And if it doesn't, you address it. It's called side address. So that video there, which is the third one over on the top, we talk about that. And I found, most people need a little bit of help there. We see a lot of times where microphones, the closer you are to it, the better sound you get, which we won't see on this scene. But if I were to cross back over here, the closer I get to it, the better the sound. But, depends on, all that volume and different background. But, people want to be way back here. Now I'm in a controlled environment. I'm able to boost it up a little bit. And I do have some technology that we'll be covering called audio hijack to make things even a little bit better. And we'll be working on that along with, if you go back on some of our stuff, we did cover a little bit of the Live Track 8, which is something we're going to be integrating in. I'm moving to my upstairs studio and trying to finish that part off. And when I do, we'll be using the better soundboard and better microphone. But that's all sitting up there. So we're down in the happy hour bar area, or our past scene, so that's where we're going to stay. But having said that, some other things that we covered not that long ago was getting proper color with white balancing. Which that video, I found out I had some backlights on here that were kicking in some orange that kind of threw off where I was taking the white balance from, which threw it off in there. But the concept is still the same. You fill with, you get these things called gray cards. And we talked about how to get this good photo, like if you were to take a photograph of this scene of me right now, Kodak, a long time ago, back in the 1800s and 1900s, early, when cameras were really coming around, they learned to get exposure and proper exposure. If you imagined a picture to be an oil painting and you took your hand and went all on it and smeared it all around, then it would come out to be something called 18% gray. Well, they figured out for color too, if you know that 18% gray or that neutral gray, then if you have an orange light, you can subtract that neutral gray and you'll now have proper color. If you have a blue light, a cool light, you can add orange to warm it up. If you have a magenta cast or a green cast, you can go opposite of the other one by subtracting out that 18% gray. So that became a pretty important part. And we talk about it in that, better color in camera using white balance. And then how you can manipulate that. We'll have another later video, but if you had a gold umbrella and you want a hyper blue sky, really you could just shoot more of that goldish color onto a person and then white balance it out. If you add more orangish colors, you can hyper your blue skies by compensating for that. So you put more of that opposite of blue onto a person. What's the opposite? We know now warm is orangish color, cool is blue. If you put a bunch of orange on their face and then balance that out, it just adds blue, which means a blue shirt's going to look way more blue. And blue eyes, way more blue, and it's done in camera. It's kind of like in-camera Photoshop, which I was hearing my daughter today talk with her school friends, and they said, yeah, Photoshop didn't used to exist, 25 years ago, which is funny because they're, third graders. And the thing is, it really did back then. We still had photo manipulation. There was such things. They just did it differently. When you held a camera for a long time, you could move it. You could block out parts and then put something else there. There were ways to develop. There were bleach bypass, and all sorts of cross process ways to manipulate a photo. And you could dodge burn it back then. Dodge burn isn't a new thing of Photoshop. It's a thing from back in the day. That's why it has the name dodge burn, because you used to dodge it out by holding out a thing on it and then burn in by letting more light in. So you would have these different techniques where you would just hold a little thing over it to block it out. So people don't always realize that's where things used to come from. But yeah, we of course had our happy hour and Geek Out last week, and then some fun how to remove a stuck lens. But if you want some fun stuff, we did 30 days of tips basically if you go and look at our Vlogmas playlist. So that's out there, and we go pretty in depth on that. So we have a whole bunch of stuff. We talk about ways to back up your system. Oh, let's not play it. But you can kind of see, how to create a boot disk, how to connect your GoPros for live streaming, how to set them up for live streaming, how to display your Android screen on there. So we covered a whole bunch of different things in there. Organized and exporting, camera overlays and text overlays if you're an eCam user. Like I said, how to do proper backups, how to synchronize your files, and different tools for that so that you don't have to be relying on just your hard drive on your computer. How to revive dead external hard drives, which could be extremely useful. And then different things you can do with the Notes app. So there's a wealth of stuff out there. And if you're curious, the best place to see that is on the YouTube channel using the link down below, or using that little code right there. If you hover over that and say, hey, I want to go there. If you use your smartphone, it'll say, do you want to go there? And you'll see live out there, and you can subscribe. But hey, it looks like we have a friend in the audience. So Christy, yeah, let's say way back 21 years. Yeah, we had Photoshop, but as you know, we had Photoshop essentially before that in the dark room. I wanted to say green room. I'm looking at a green screen over there, so all I can think of was green room. But yeah, we had it back in the dark room. Essentially, we had ways to Photoshop. We could splice film together, overlay one, and expose it onto the other film. There was Photoshop before there was Photoshop. Photoshop just made it easier with the digital side, and in some cases harder on the digital side, because we know that did not always turn out. It doesn't always save us time. Many of us photographers know we get requests of, well, we'll just fix that in Photoshop. Well, most of us photographers would rather get it right in camera. We try to spend less time. As you get farther in photography, you try to spend less time in Photoshop. That's one way to gauge kind of early on. Unless you're doing composites, you have really cool people like Dan McClanahan and Ben Shirk and Richard Strudevant and all these really cool people who do awesome composites. That doesn't count. That's time you have to spend in Photoshop, and they're still way cooler than me. But they'll always say too, they have to have a really good photograph. And whenever they take photographs for family and stuff like that, a way to gauge a really great photographer is to sometimes figure out how long they spend in Photoshop. If they're willing to fix it in Photoshop, then they're probably not necessarily, and that's going to sound bad, not as high quality as you would like, and you get what you paid for. So the really best ones know how to manipulate their scene to get it in there, and then they tweak it with Photoshop. They can do a lot on there. Like I know Chrissy was on there, really great photographer. Husband Clint, really great photographer, and they know how to get a photo right in camera and then enhance it in Photoshop. Not necessarily replace. Where me, I'll go and tweak the crap out of something in Photoshop. So, I might spend way too much time in Photoshop because I have OCD and folds and close, and I go beyond also what my clients would ever see, which is a fatal flaw that I have as a photographer. Always was told that I go way too far with it. Sometimes not Photoshop plastic skin way too far. Let me clarify that I'm just photoshopping stuff that no one's ever going to care about, and that's That's probably true. I spend, like I said, way too much time on it. But having said that, you know, that's some of the stuff we've been covering for the Geek Out. So again, if you have a geek question, if you have a tech question, need help with something, post Q and just type it in, whether you're on Facebook, whether you're on YouTube. And if you're on YouTube and want to know how to find us, just look for at Glitch 2600 and you'll find us there. You'll find us on Clubhouse. You'll find us on Instagram, all the places for the most part. I try to tie in all of those spots. And you can ask those questions. Even when it's not a Geek Out, you ask them. We'll either move it into a Glitch Bite or we'll bring it into the next Glitch Geek Out. I decided this time, like I said, we're doing Geek Outs twice a month now. So, you'll see another one in 2 weeks. And we tie them sometimes with our happy hour because we do a happy hour once a month because I really like, not necessarily Iowa wine, but Iowa craft beer and different fun stuff. So that's where we geek out on that while still answering your tech questions. So a lot of times you'll catch those at the end of the month. We'll put them back to back, mostly because I'm sitting down in the basement. Might as well continue on from the studio at that point anyway and keep going. But you can ask those questions other times. This week I had some submitted ones that aren't going to be as well to show on the Geek Out because it was how to transfer a WordPress site from a SQL backend to an Nginx in Linux, and it was a little bit more in depth. That a set of friends submitted. Once I get that figured out, I'll probably do a nice little glitch bite or a megabyte on that to show people how to do that. There's sometimes easier ways to do an export from WordPress before the site's down, but we're having to do this after the fact. So that was one of the things kind of submitted. I did get asked about AirPrint. And so something to know is if you have a Mac device or an Apple device, you can do something called AirPrint. And you can do it. Most makers, print makers nowadays, or printer makers or designers, can't think of the word, printer manufacturers. There we go. Like Canon, HP, Brother, all of them, a large chunk of them do support AirPrint. And so you can look that up. See, it just means when you go in on your phone, it pops up. You don't have to go through another app. If not, they all do make apps. I just don't like jumping around to those because depending on they are or who's trying to do it, like for me to jump into an app and use what they call share sheets, that's not necessarily so hard. It's a pretty piece of cake for me to share things around, but it's way easier if I'm just in my email and want to print something to hit the print icon on my iPhone or my tablet. And that's where AirPrint comes in because it doesn't require a fancy driver or interpretation for it. It's a common language. It's on something called Bonjour. Well, like I said, some Canon ones get it, but you can pretty much always guarantee an HP printer will have it. So one of the questions that came in was, hey, what's a good cheap printer that has AirPrint? Well, if you want to guarantee you have AirPrint, start with an HP. And as I covered in some past ones, I will say cheap is relative. Because you can get a really cheap inkjet printer that looks cheap up front, but costs way more over time. So the consumables, those ink cartridges, the paper for it, everything can cost more in the long run than sometimes spending a little bit more money up front or even your time for it. So an inkjet at best in a black and white can print out the fastest, normally around 19 pages per minute. That's the fastest black, only black and white inkjet printer. Now, I can print at almost 30 pages per minute in black or color with a laser printer. And everyone goes, well, laser printers are expensive. Well, that's because at the store you see multi-function laser printers, scanner, copier, coffee maker, all that. You can get printers that aren't that. You can spend a little less and get just a black and white. If you don't need color at home, very often, you can get a black and white laser printer with AirPrint for about $50. You can get an HP little one for that. And the difference is, at home, when you get an ink cartridge, those ink cartridges are good for maybe 300 prints. When you get a toner cartridge for a laser printer, you're normally starting out on the learner ones, on the learner toners that come with it, because they don't give you the full size ones, that can do close to 1,500 prints. You get high capacity ones that do closer to 3,000. So where you bought an ink cartridge for 60 bucks, maybe even 40 bucks for an off-brand one for your inkjet, you can spend 60 bucks for a laser toner cartridge that gets you 10 times the space. So yes, the printer itself may have cost, a little bit more, but the consumables come out cheaper. There's a reason why large businesses don't have inkjets around it, why they cut them out, why they don't let you have them. There's a reason why they have community laser printers. It's cheaper. If you go to a print house, they tend to not have them. The only places is like photo printers where they have different toned ink in there, where they need a certain depth. Like if you're a photographer and printing your own photos, for me, I had both. I had a laser printer for my business stuff, and then, for my business documents, contracts, all that cost more, the stuff I was printing more often. And then I had a special photo printer for photographs that I didn't send off to the lab that I was doing separately. So keep in mind, you don't have to get an all-in-one printer, but if you did want one, you can get a color HP that can do printer fax, all that fun stuff, on sale most of the time for $250 to $300, which isn't that far off from an inkjet printer. And it does all of that with color. You'll be good for close to 1,500 prints. And then when you buy your next toner cartridge, yes, when you get all four, it's probably going to cost around $100 because you'll get 3 colors and a black. It'll be maybe 100 to 120, but it'll be good for 3,000 prints, which is still less than you'll ever spend on your ink cartridges over time for an inkjet. So if you don't need an all-in-one printer, instead just buy a color laser printer. A color laser printer can run you about 150. They'll go up to 200. They don't actually cost that much more to tag on the multifunction. If you need just a black and white, 50 bucks. You can get them right there. They'll have AirPrint. It's just whether they have wireless, whether they're wired, all that fun stuff in there. Obviously, I say spring a little bit up front for the wireless if you're going to use AirPrint. So where the question came in, what was the cheapest? I would say it's not necessarily what's the cheapest, what's the right. You can get a cheap inkjet that doesn't have wireless that you can plug into your router or plug into a computer for anywhere as low as 30 to 50 bucks, but you're going to pay a lot in the long run. I'd say spend 100, 150 on one that does a little bit more, or even go all the way up to the 250, 300 multifunction with Wi-Fi, and it'll be a good investment and will stick around for quite a while. And that's probably that's probably the cheapest really when you bank that out over years. Like I said, there's a reason why businesses, when we do stuff, we don't just go, okay, how much are we spending this year on this one product? We go, hey, we spent $1,000 on it this year and it depreciates over 3 to 5. Or we spent $4,000 on a laptop. It's not because it's $4,000 this year. It's because it's really $1,000 when I replace it over 4 years. It's $1,000 each year, which in the grand scheme of it might be almost nothing. And if you think of it that way for home, you're purchasing right up front. One thing that always bugs me is when people spend too little on a tripod. So you want a tripod that's nice and sturdy, and so you go out and buy the cheap SunPack one because it costs 30 bucks. And your camera shakes and you don't get good photos, so you go out and buy the middle ground, whatever name one, for 70 to 80. And then it still shakes a little bit, but it does better. Then you turn around and buy the $150 legs and the right head from Manfrotto, or you get the Giotto one, or whichever. What costs more? Buying 3 tripods over time or buying the right one up front? Probably the right one up front. Just like the right camera. People start with one. Don't get me wrong, you jump in, you have a Canon Rebel, great way to start. A lower Nikon, great way to start and learn it. But they'll always go, well, I want a cheap lens. Well, the lens will outlive your camera a million times over. I've got lenses that have gone through, 5 different cameras. And it's better off for me to buy the camera body without a lens and just spend more on a lens, because it costs less. I might save $100 off the cost, like for a Sony or a Canon, if I buy it without the kit lens. So let's say I were to buy a Canon Rebel, and it was going to be $1,200. Without the kit lens, it might be 11 or 1050. Well, you could argue, well, you get that and buy the lens. Now you've got two lenses. Well, if you never use it because it doesn't work as well, because the kit lens isn't necessarily great, you could have still spent and doubled, spent $150 more and got the 50 millimeter fantastic prime, or even spend a little bit more on the long run, but you would have in the true long run saved $150. So it's always good to think that through, because if you're repurchasing, what's the use? If I go to the store, I want to buy the right thing up front. It's okay to step stuff up. When it comes to things like your backup, you start one way today. You don't have to go all the way to the finish line when it comes to backing up. If you've never backed up your hard drives, buying a second hard drive, copying all your stuff to it, and then keep it at a friend's, your mom's house somewhere, so it's off-site, is better than not backing up at all. In the long run, hopefully you ratchet up a little bit better each year, and you end up with backblaze, like I cover in one of the past videos. You have backblaze, keeping your stuff up on the web so it's everywhere, and then you have a local hard drive that you're mirroring everything off to, so that you have a local copy and then you have a copy off-site. So that gets you a lot of protection for not very much, but that's something where you can ratchet up. But always think about that cost. If it's something where you're not going to be able to reuse part of it, it might not hurt. When you say cheapest shouldn't always be cheapest right now. Because when it comes to technology and geekery and all that, cheapest is normally planned out over time. And so printers, cameras, even reflectors. We all start with foam core. Foam core is cheap, and it's great. Great way to start and ratchet up. That's one of those things that's not bad for it, but if you constantly are rebuying foam core because you're out doing shoots outside, if you're in the studio, foam core is great. It doesn't get beat up nearly as much. But if you're outside, then having a pop one that you can tear down and set up and made from fabric is probably a better investment in the long run, even though it costs, foam core itself might cost only upwards of $10 for a pretty big one, or $20, where a pop reflector might cost up to $99 if you're getting a kit, or at least $40, $50. It's going to be cheaper in the long run for that part. So it's just showing that the right purchase up front is pretty important in that part. So sit and think through it, and don't look at cheapest as the price tag, but cheapest over time. Hopefully that makes sense. I didn't go off on too crazy of a rant, because I can be known to do that when it comes to purchasing technology, because I'm always stuck on there. I love a good value though too. I will say one of the microphones that I've talked about in the past, the MXL 770, is a great microphone you can get for $99, heck, $89 on Amazon, because it's made by Marshall. It's an offshoot of Marshall, it's MXL. They originally wanted to price that mic at $160, so it's a $160 mic selling at $90. So that's one of those things where you're getting more value than you're paying for it. Now, you can't expect that mic though to be a $500 mic. You can expect it to blow away other $100 mics, but you can't expect it to blow away a ribbon mic at $500, or expect it to pick up the whole room and be great like some of those shotgun mics. Some people will go, hey, I want a microphone I can use from the back of the room and pick people up, and I want to spend $100. Well, it's going to sound like a $100 mic sitting in the back of the room. There's a reason why in movies are expensive, because that microphone that's picking someone up from above, one, it's more than one, it's going into a sound engineer, he's doing stuff in his headset, and that mic alone, just the mic, not even the pole and the cable connected to it, that mic is starting at the $2,000 range. So you can't expect that $100 mic to do what that $2,000 mic can do. Nope, just not going to do it. Now you can bridge it and go, I don't expect $2,000, but maybe I'll spend $500 on the mic and get better than the $100 one and control my sound a bit. So different choices, different strokes. But again, if you guys have tech questions, feel free to post a queue on it and send it through. Otherwise, like I said, you can catch any of the videos. If you type a question on any of them, it'll come back to me and I will answer them. They'll come up on another bite, or I'll bring them through to the next Geek Out. I know it's a busy time of the year. We had a lot more questions submitted for the last one. This time, not so much. But like I said, people have been hitting me up for lots of little things, but nothing that's been too crazy on here. I do have some cool new Zoom stuff we might be covering in a bite, but that's going to be the bulk of it. So I've kept you guys on for 33 minutes. Hopefully there's been something really cool that you've picked up out of this. If not, you were on someone else's, live stream. But if you did enjoy it, then please remember you can follow us on Facebook using the @glitch2600 link. Otherwise, come join us on the YouTube. And you can find more of our tips. Most of them broke down. Like I said, those glitch bites are bite-sized tips that you can consume in under 15 minutes. So we cover all sorts of different stuff. Like I said, some photography, some others. If you have something you'd like us to cover, just submit it through and we'll cover it. Because I'm always looking for topics and different things to talk about. It's not always Mac. We do have some Windows in there too. We have an Android now that we're messing around with that. So if you have those, I'm Microsoft certified. I'm happy to cover those for you. I just have to dust off it a little bit because that is part of my day job. But you can ask those photography, videography, live stream questions, and we'll get them answered for you. So again, thanks for stopping out, guys. I hope you had a great Tuesday in Geek Out. I had a good time, and we'll catch you next Monday for our next Glitch Bite. And otherwise, we'll catch you in 2 weeks. You'll see it on the page when we have another Geek Out. So catch you later and see you soon.